Do you think now, right? Because, you know, like before COVID, let's say, there was like, I don't even want to say necessarily there was any like stigma between clubs or lifters or coaches, but I would definitely think now that there's been a good couple of international meets where all the teams have come together and worked together. I'd imagine like you've absolutely learned new things about the guys from City Gym, the guys from Abs. I think there's definitely been a much better collaborative effort over the last, say, year and a half, 2 years. And I'd imagine you've learned a lot about people that you probably previously wouldn't have known a huge amount about.
Massively. Yeah, hugely. I think, you know, it was kind of one of the biggest fallouts of COVID is that a lot of the kind of othering that does just occur. You know what I mean? Like when you call something an entity, a body of people, when you call it a club or a team or some other synonym of those two words, like there will be othering to other teams. You see it in like, you know, football clubs and things like that. There's mass brawls and whatnot. Yeah. It's like, lads, you're all just kicking the same ball.
Yeah,
you know, the goal is the exact same. So I think it's pretty natural for stuff like that to occur over time. Especially, I think powerlifting is one where it's especially likely because there's so much kind of differing opinions on like what's best and philosophy behind you know, all of it. But COVID really, really, really magnified all of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you couldn't consolidate any of it because you didn't have the opportunity to like have something happen, have someone say something or do something stupid, but then meet up at a competition and chat and offset maybe some of the hurt or upset or other kind of negative feelings that come with that event. So it was just this kind of build of stuff. And it felt like everyone in the scene was kind of involved in some way. And it was often kind of propagated by people who, you know, had nothing to really do with it. You know what I mean? Like me and Jay, for example, like me and Jay have never actually had a negative interaction. You know what I mean? But over COVID, there was definitely like a negative thing between Odyssey and Abs, which is me and Jay. You know what I mean? And then the body of people underneath the two of us. So yeah, it was quite strange.
Yeah.
It was quite strange, quite a strange experience. But yeah, definitely this last year has just been awesome in terms of kind of, like I say, consolidating all of that, getting to actually just spend time with people and really get to know who these people are beyond what they post on Instagram or what they don't post on Instagram in my case.
Very true.
You know, like I used to post, I feel like people's opinions of me were based on these like ranty stories that I used to post all the time. And those ranty stories would just come as a result of, I was working in a gym at the time and I had like an hour and a half of downtime in the morning. So that hour and a half of downtime, if I wasn't training, would just be filled with me sitting on Instagram, which is designed to piss you off. It literally is.
All social media.
Yeah, it literally is. It's designed like that. The negative emotion is the one that will keep you scrolling the longest, right? And seeing the most ads. So it literally is designed to annoy you. And so naturally I was getting more and more annoyed the more and more I was scrolling. So I'd end up writing some ranty, douchey story on Instagram. I feel like that was like who people thought I was. Until they actually got to meet me and hang out. And
I think that can be said for a lot of things. And this is, I know I was just talking about pro wrestling a couple of minutes ago, but I'm going to bring it back up. So we're always told when you're being interviewed, you want to make the point with as few words as possible, because the more things you say, it gives people more reasons to dislike you. So when they, like the WWE, when they debuted, do you know who Rey Mysterio is?
Yeah, of course.
The guy with the mask.
Yeah.
So when he debuted, he didn't like speak on the mic for like 6 months. And everybody loved the guy when he was brand new, because he was, you know, high flyer, little guy flipping around the ring, but he didn't say anything. So even when he debuted, they just had him walking down a hallway and the crowd went crazy. And that was a big thing. They purposefully did that to build this crowd like support behind him, because they didn't, it's like a video game when you have a silent protagonist. You can like project your reasoning behind why somebody does something, but the more somebody says and the more that you can take like very surface level, what's the word? So you can take like a surface level view of what it is they think based on like an Instagram post where you can't really elaborate what you want to say. People are going to make up their minds about that. Another prime example of this is somebody like and who kind of lives up to his reputation sometimes is Jake Brennan, who like is notorious in the Irish powerlifting scene, but most people that have met him have said Jake's actually all right most of the time. You know, I've had him in this chair twice and he's been an absolute gentleman both times. But am I aware that Jake can fly off the handle in person and sometimes live up to the reputation? Absolutely. But I'm glad to hear you say that, like, you know, as time has gone on, these things have definitely dissipated, which is good to see. And I think it makes powerlifting here a lot better because ultimately we are all doing the same. You're probably going to find more in common with somebody in another club than you are with somebody in another sport. You know, because we all want to lift the most weights off the floor or do the thing.
100%. And I really genuinely believe in the future of Irish powerlifting. And that sounds like a weird kind of distinction to make. But I actually believe more in the future of Irish powerlifting right now than I do international powerlifting. I think the scene here is like, it's uniquely strong, but also quite diverse. Yeah. Diverse enough that like we're not going to kind of get stuck in a particular kind of vision or viewpoint or avenue for progression in the sport, if you know what I mean.
For sure.
And I really think kind of, again, based on this last year of everyone really getting to know each other, like everyone's really aligned in what they want. Like I really, really believe in what Jay's doing with the series. And I didn't before. I did not before. I thought it was working against the kind of long-term goals of what I thought the IPF could be. Not the whole Olympic thing, but just this grand stage for powerlifting. But no, I think what Jay's doing is really, really important. And I think long-term, no matter what happens in the kind of international scene, I think Irish powerlifting is really emboldened and bolstered by the likes of what Jay's doing. And I'm sure there'll be more Jays as time goes on as well.
Well, it's cool. Like the series is cool.
Awesome. Yeah, it is really cool. Just get rid of the wraps. And I love it. And the deadlift bar, man. The deadlift bar sucks.
You don't like it?
I hate it. Hate it.
There's so many like super heavyweight lifters now going, that prick. Yeah, I'm glad that in August we're running the like IPF standard flight. I think that's going to be really good and presented in another way that people can maybe more easily digest. I think there is that like wraps obviously do add another element to what powerlifting is. It's like that really old school classic raw. But I can understand maybe from an external point of view, if somebody's watching, like, why does that guy walk funny when he walks out with those things on his knees and that guy just has sleeves? You know, so I can see that.
It's tough to explain. Like powerlifting can be quite, funnily enough, because it is so simple, it can be quite complicated to explain to like, you know, someone who's unacquainted with it. Yeah. And then to have to explain like the nuance of like what equipment they're using, what wrap or sleeve or, you know what I mean? I think that it is not in the interest of making the sport as friendly to newcomers as possible. Now, it might be in the interest of making the sport as kind of advertiser friendly as possible because wraps mean more weight on the bar. And same with the deadlift bar for most people, not me. But I don't think that we should be necessarily looking at advertisers. I feel like we should be looking at people who are a little bit interested in the sport. You know what I mean? People who are on the fringe, who are right on the edge of like being interested. You know, who just need that one push, and next thing they're a 10-year veteran of powerlifting. And I feel like those are the people that we need to be looking at. I feel like making the barrier to entry as low as possible, I think is really, that's where I believe the most kind of fruitful rewards would be. And so I think that standardizing, you know, sleeves, just because they're nice to wear, they're easy to put on, they're easy to get, you know, you can train by yourself. I would choose those over wraps just for that reason alone, and also they hurt.
So this is officially Adam Phillips saying I am not going to wear wraps in a competition
again, right, for the 10th time. No, I will if Jay competes. Like I say, if Jay competes, I'll sign up.
You'll throw the wraps on too.
And I'll throw the wraps on, and we'll see where we're at. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and for sure, like, I mean, I can see that side of it. As somebody, I've competed in sleeves and wraps, and I can absolutely see the deadlift bar. I'm not pushed on, to be honest. I don't care if we use that or not, because I personally don't think it makes that big of a difference. I think this is the thing people lean on a lot. Like, they're like, it's a stiff bar. I'm like, yeah, it probably isn't going to make that big of a difference.
Yeah, and I feel like it, again, in line with what I'm saying, I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose of the barbell. The reason barbells are so popular is because you can use them for everything. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like we should just use one barbell.
Yeah.
One, so that the guy in the gym, like I say, who's on the fringe and maybe interested and could be pulled into the sport and could spend 10 years doing the thing and then pulling other people into the sport, he can just use one bar.
Do you know when the series was started, or when the Abs Pro started in 2018, it was only it was all just one bar,
Yep.
and it was just a rack, and the only addition was you could use wraps. And then it was everyone like, do a monolift, do deadlift bar. And he kind of just like, no, oh, fine, all right, we'll do it.
I know Jay's decision-making kind of process there. It's like, is it cool?
Yeah.
If yes, let's do it.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. He wants to make like the sport like more of a spectacle. Like I've said it many times on this podcast, I equate it to darts. It's like darts by itself is probably not the most interesting thing to watch. And watching a meet of like 50 lifters over time, 200 kilo deadlift just becomes another deadlift, and then so does 300, and you get numb to it. But if you can make the pageantry of it bigger, I think that keeps people dialed in. Like one thing I think that the Irish PF could do that they could steal directly from Ab Series is do less actual seating and do more standing tables, because when people are standing, they're more likely to interact with what's going on in front of them because heart rate's a bit higher, a bit more dialed in. When you're sitting down, you're kind of like halfway to bed, you're halfway falling asleep. But that's one thing I would change. But I do like the fact that we have meets that have all these things, and then we do have the Irish PF, and it kind of gives people the choice of what aligns more closely with their vision of powerlifting is, or where they want to lift. And I think that's just to tie it back into what you were saying earlier on about like we have a tendency to other like different clubs, different lifters, different coaches. I get it, but I think it stands to all of our benefit that there are other approaches. Like it is probably better that Odyssey Strength program differently to Abs, and Abs program differently to City Gym, and City Gym program differently to Urban Barbell or whoever. Like I'm missing loads of clubs here because I just can't remember them all. But you know what I'm saying? We all program differently, and that's probably to the strength of the scene. Because if it was all just one way, it would become stagnant and there would never be new ideas. And I know that's something Jay has said. I feel like I'm advocating for Jay really strongly on this podcast, but it's something that he said recently to me about somebody was like slagging him for having like TikToks, and he's like, all the kids are on it, and they're like, yeah, but like it's a bit stupid, like. And they're like, no. He goes, look, if you don't adapt, you die. And I was like, damn, he gets it. Like he'll roll with the times as things change. So
he's really good at that. He is excellent at that. Like his ability to market is exceptional. Like it's really, really good. Something I definitely aspire to.
Yeah.
It's super impressive. Because it's difficult. It's really hard. It's my least favorite part of all of this, to be honest.
Well, it's an expression that I like about powerlifting. It's a long game. The longer you're in it, the better you get. And I think that stands for, like, as we were talking about before, your training's been absolutely popping off lately, like leaps and bounds above when you last competed. And again, it proves that powerlifting's the long game. Obviously, something's been clicking lately. I think you talked about it yourself. When you were at Western Euros, I believe you said you had that switch where you're like, maybe I could actually do this. Maybe I could get to that level. And I think that comes to people as they're in it for longer and longer. And I'd imagine the same thing will come with the growth of your own club, your own business. It will just get bigger and bigger and bigger. But answer me this one question. Will there be ever an Odyssey facility? The infamous one. I know you've been asked it like dozens of times.
Like, ideally, yeah. That would be great. Anyone who's ever been involved in the running of a facility or runs a facility will be screaming at the screen saying, don't do it. You know what I mean? Because it sucks.
Yeah.
Like, you mentioned working 80-hour weeks in FlyFit. Like, yeah, I worked 80-hour weeks in the gym at home as well. And it's horrible. And, it was, so the gym I was in was the owner, Ray, and myself. It was just the two of us. And so obviously he owned everything and all liability was on him. I had nothing. But like, I still cared.
Yeah.
And it was still really tough, and people don't understand what really goes into a facility. Like, I have been pitched so many times on my tiny business in the grand scheme of things, but I've been pitched on so many ideas for a gym from people who will never actually like pull through. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would have to like be doing so well financially that it would just be like, oh yeah, it would be like, why not? For me to ever open a gym.
do you know what I've learned about it from talking to people that own different businesses? They say you start to care less about, like in this case, the powerlifting. You basically become a cleaner. And the thing you're going to argue with people most is not if they're overshooting their lifts, but if they left the lights on.
Yep.
So you're adopting a whole other ball ache, basically,
Yep.
to just facilitate something people can do in a lot of other places. But I know it's like a question that you get a lot, so I need to ask it. Same with the reps.
And nothing is worse for your training than owning or being involved in heavily in a gym. That nothing is worse for your training. Like there's nothing, like I hated training for pretty much the entire duration of the time, the 4 or 5 years that I worked in this gym. I really did not like being in the gym. So like my training was just like, how can I get the minimum amount done in as little time as possible and get the hell out of here, go home and eat, and come back for my fifth split shift of the week.
So with that, like obviously it's your career has evolved drastically since then. You're running your own business, you're coaching dozens of great lifters yourself, and you then coach for Ireland internationally, and you're going to Malta tomorrow. So thank you very much for coming in to record. But yeah, and you'll get that opportunity to spend loads more time with Jay Farrant and your 6 people staying in a 3-bed Airbnb. So Ireland has set, I believe we're only sending 4 lifters, am I right in saying that? So by now, by the time, this is why, because people have asked for predictions. We're not doing predictions because I don't think it will mean as much as predictions would for domestic meets, whether they're opens or whatever. But we have Cian Madden, Alison O'Reilly, Don Stacey.
Yep.
And I'm forgetting one.
Emma
McDermott. So we're sending like a very small but very elite, like the A team, you know? So this has been a little bit of a controversial topic. Last year, the Irish PF published the new A and B standards for the lifters and for the scene. And there was some pushback on it, I think, from some of the domestic lifters. I think most people thought it was good, but some people no one hits these standards quite yet. How have you felt that rollout? Even amongst your own lifters, your own athletes, what's the general chatter been like?
I guess I try and steer my own lifters away from standards or numbers or records or anything like that, because they're going to change.
Yeah,
you know, it's all finite. Like, yes, no one's hitting the standards right now, but in 5 years, everyone will be hitting these standards, and there'll be new standards. It's like, don't stress. Like, just train, try and enjoy the process. If you are strong enough to go to, worlds, awesome. Like that's class. Like that's such a cool experience. So, I'm so happy for you. Same way, like if you have enough money to like go and buy, a Lamborghini, awesome. That's great for you. If you don't, that's life. You know what I mean? Just keep training. Enjoy the process. If that's to come, it's to come. If it isn't, it isn't. Again, like I say, I really do try and steer away from that being the reason that they're training, because I feel like, for the people for who it is their reason. It's their reason for a reason because they're just at that level. You know what I mean? They would have been at that level no matter what. They would have been at that level whether they were coached by any coach in the Irish PF, in any gym in the Irish PF. All they needed was access to a gym with bars and weights and the ability to go out and compete. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't think I really answered your question there.
Oh no, I get it. Like while it's something that exists, like you said, it's a finite thing. It's going to be this ever-changeable thing. It's probably not something most lifters, like probably I'd say 90% of the lifters on the scene don't even need to think about.
The overwhelming majority of complaints came from people like who weren't hitting the previous standards either. Came from people who were like, let's say, eyeing up the previous standards.
Right.
And, maybe they were 50 kilos off. But a lot of new lifters think 50 kilos isn't a lot. And a lot of people, like you or I, or people who've been in it even longer, realize how much that really is. You might put 100 kilos on your total from meet 1 to meet 2, and then spend the next 10 years trying to add the next 50. That's me,
I completely feel you on that one.
Yeah,
I like to regress between meets personally. I get you. Do you find that because I find this with a lot of newer lifters and people interested in the sport, like they're like having this flirtatious relationship with powerlifting because their training in a gym is going well. Like I had a guy stop me ages ago and he's like, if I was to compete, I'd be going under 93. And I had to look at your Cian Madden lad. What do I have to do to be him? I'm like, compete for 10 years. What are you talking about? Like Cian's probably the best under 93 in the country right now until Damien Nam starts competing under 93, and then he's just going to be better than everybody. But do you know what I mean? That people have this tendency to look at who's number one either in their weight class or in the country and say, well, sure, if I can't beat them, what's the point? And I always try to equate it to people of like, if you decide one day you want to start sprinting, you don't say, how fast does Usain Bolt do this time? You just go and do it. So I don't know if it's because powerlifting is something that's so binary as a weight on a bar. Like, well, he lifts 300, so I need to train to lift 300 as well. Whereas I don't know if people do it with other things. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think we just kind of have that habit of looking at this, like, we tend to look at who are in the top, like 2%, 1%, and play this game of comparison. Or at least I find newer lifters tend to help quite a bit.
Yeah, man. It's like I guess it's like a societal thing. You know, it's the norm to compare yourself to like the best and want to be the best at everything. You know, you're looking at the destination rather than the actual journey. And I feel like people who, like the overwhelming majority of people in powerlifting are not Keane Madden.
Yeah.
You know, they're like me. You know, they just did the thing, got bit by the bug, loved it, really loved it. Like, I don't know anyone who loves their sport as much as powerlifters. You know, I really can't think about it because powerlifting is quite unique. Jack Thornton said it to me a couple of weeks ago that like everyone who watches powerlifting also powerlifts.
Yeah.
You know, that's very rare. The only other thing that he again mentioned this, I think he got it from someone else, is esports.
Yeah.
You know, only people who or people who watch esports also play esports, you know? And I can't think of any other sport where that's the case, you know? Like football, rugby, whatever. Like most of the people who watch rugby don't actually play rugby.
It probably speaks to the accessibility of powerlifting then, because people can mimic what they see. You know, and I'm going to bring pro wrestling up again. Because like little kids will watch pro wrestling and then go kill each other in the back garden on the trampoline.
That was me.
And I think that's most little kids that watch these things because we want to emulate. And I think it's that idea, like the people that, I think it's probably the inverse. Like kids watch the wrestling and then do the wrestling. Whereas I think is people start doing the training for powerlifting, squat, bench and deadlift are fairly easy skills to acquire. And then they start going like, oh, there's a sport based around these things. I'm going to have a look at that and watch that. Like I know, like I think I've probably watched like a very small handful of like powerlifting meets before I ever powerlifted. Like not that many, but like now that I'm in it, I tend to try and watch quite a few, like, you know, so I think it's like the inverse that because we tend to get into it and then become big fans of it. Like that's one thing I think I accuse myself of. Like whenever I listen to you and Connor talk on your podcast, you guys know so much about powerlifting and the history of powerlifting. I'm like, I am such a jackass. I have no idea what they're talking about. I have to go and look it up. But but I do agree with you that it is probably that unique thing that you've got all these people that are in it that are also can relate to the people who are on the platform. But I want to ask you about Malta. So you're going to be heading off there tomorrow. How long are you guys gone for?
10 days. I'll be there. Well, 9 days. 9 days. Yeah.
Some of the the lifting times, they're lifting quite late in the night and very early in the morning.
Yeah. It's a huge competition. It's insanely big. Probably too big, to be honest with you. But it's not uncommon either. That's a pretty common thing. I think at Junior Worlds in Turkey last year, I think like Andrew Blackwood and Mark Stell, I think their last deadlifts were in and around 11:30.
Wow.
11:30 at night, yeah.
And tell me, how do you find coaching and handling international meets versus domestic meets?
Well, I love it. I really love it. Like, it's weird, maybe little psychopathic. Like I really love the whole like getting up at 5 a.m, going out and spending the entire day, like 16 hours doing it. Like there's something about it that's just so cool, especially to look back on. Like so obviously it's not always great in the moment. But yeah, no, I really love it. What's different about it? I guess there is it is unique in that like I don't know the athletes, you know, intimately the way I would my own athletes. Like I don't know what would be particularly effective for them in terms of like, you know, the handling vibe on the day. So there's a lot of kind of guesswork or kind of like putting out little feelers and seeing how it's responded to and kind of, you know, following down whichever path seems to be most effective. And that's really fun. I really like that because you get to kind of like, you get to really, I don't know, refine your skills a little bit in a way that you don't. It is just a real kind of unique challenge. Now I have made my life easier in that I tend to send on like little, you know, information kind of collection forms where I do get a little bit of a vibe for the individual. But yeah, it's mostly the same, just a little bit different in that regard. And to be fair, you know, it's Ireland, Irish powerlifting. So even if I don't know, you know, someone very well, like I know them. Yeah. You know, and the majority of the people now on the national team, like I know them, you know. So it's just it'll be the younger people coming through. but they are generally very receptive to whatever coaches say anyway, you know.
You mentioned then about like, so you're handling lifters, you obviously haven't coached intimately. These are people coming from all different clubs to represent the country. Has there been anyone that's like been very like surprising to handle, like you didn't know what it was going to be like and it ended up being like an absolute blast? Is there anyone that sticks out?
Yeah, I didn't handle him directly, but I was involved in handling him at Western Euros. Jared Buckley was class.
Hercules.
Yeah, man. He was awesome to handle. Like, so unbelievably receptive and like kind, you know, and agreeable. Like he would tell us like, this is what I want. And then I would counter with like, this is what I think is the best thing to do. And he'd be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like, let's do that.
Jer is actually somebody I think that falls victim to where people base who this person is off the way they present themselves online. And Jer likes riling people up. Like, it's like a rite of passage in powerlifting now, I think, or even strongman, to get memed by Jer.
Yeah.
So, like, I know people get like anxiety when they see Jer Hercules has mentioned you in a story. I think it's the best thing. I'm like, yes, what has he found? Because it's always hilarious. Like, it's always funny. But I think it's then people meet him and realize Jer's actually a nice guy. He's a good guy. Like, I have great crack with him.
Man, he is like incredibly talented.
Yeah.
At what he does. Like he's so quick and like he knows so much, like so many kind of pop culture references. He's unbelievable. He's memed me a couple times, but the best one was definitely I got this Japan t-shirt. I swapped t-shirts with one of the Japanese team at Junior Worlds. Awesome t-shirt. And like I wore it every chance I got.
Yeah.
And I think he like caught a snippet of one of the regional comp live streams and put me on like a Yu-Gi-Oh card wearing the Japan. It was awesome, man. It's so cool. It's so cool.
There's no stopping him. That's it. The moment he sees something, he's already thought of something to post about it and he's just off. But like, it's like, he's somebody. I'll actually give you an example. I do master of ceremonies for the ab series. So that before the pro am lifters or the pro lifters compete, they weigh. So it's 24-hour weigh-in, different to the RSPF, and they do like a press conference similar to the UFC. And usually, like I'll introduce them for their ceremonial weigh-in. We'll like have them do like face-offs for certain lifters, and then we'll do like the top they have at the table where they'll have mics and they'll be able to have a bit of banter or like give thoughts, and I'll ask them questions. But once or twice, Jer has just been around and I've been like, come on up, like, you know, and he's been like, oh man, are you sure? I was like, absolutely, I need you involved in this. I want to be like the straight man and have him be like the guy that just like turns the knife just that little bit. And it always works really, really well because he when he does it, he throws on the shades and he tries to live up exactly to the reputation of who he is online. And it makes the whole thing so much more entertaining for me.
It's pro wrestling.
Yes.
It's kayfabe.
Yeah.
It is entirely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool. Yeah.
I like when he memes himself as well. Did you see him? He dropped the log recently. Or the bar. That
was scary, man.
Yeah.
That was tough to watch.
Jerry lives life on the edge. That's who he is. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that because like he's somebody I think so many people misunderstand if they just talk to him. Like Jay, I think a lot of people I actually, since I had the podcast with Jay, so many people have stopped me and be like, I never knew Jay Farton was such like a personable, like cool guy. And I'm like, yeah, Jay's great. Like he's crazy, but he's great. Like he's a good guy to be around. But let me ask you a question now that you've had time to spend with Jay, you've been with Alex, you've been a lot of other coaches. And so there's always been this idea that like Odyssey program one way, abs program one way. And I actually think the more I talk to him, I think we all have the same idea. Fundamentally, we all just want to get better at these three things. We might not all necessarily do it the exact same way, but what has your impression been of these things? Like, I know we got a question about why don't Odyssey do accessories, whereas then I look at people like Andrew Rowe, who is an absolute brick shithouse. So I don't think that holds up. But give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I would say that like 90% of what everyone does is the exact same. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Then there is the 10% different, but like at the end of the day. It's so unbelievably, it's such a simple task. You know, it's what we're trying to do is so simple. Like just get people to lift weights for a very long period of time. Mm-hmm. You said earlier, like that the fact that there was kind of other avenues and other opinions is a good thing. And I could not agree more because, you know, there are people who will come to me and we just won't click. Like they just will not, they just won't like the way I think about things. Mm-hmm. You know, they might prefer abs or city gym or somewhere else for whatever different reason, just because they fit into that a little bit more. So yeah, I totally agree with you. What is different? Like, what is that 10%? It's definitely not accessories. Oh yeah, that one like bugs me because I program as many accessories as I can. You know what I mean? We're very big on meeting the individual where they're at. Like that's actually the entire thing for me, because like I touched on it just there. At the end of the day, the goal is just to keep you and I and everyone else lifting for a long time. You know, the chances are if we keep doing exactly what we're doing right now for the next 10 to 20 years, we'll probably be like really strong.
Yeah.
Maybe even like maybe even touching our potential, our genetic strength potential, we'll say. So that's my entire goal. If a person comes to me and they have an hour to train 3 times a week, I'm probably not going to give them a whole pile of accessories unless it's something that they specifically request, in which case, obviously, I'm going to give them accessories. If that's something that they really enjoy and it makes that 60 minutes 3 times a week super enjoyable, then yeah, they're going to get as many accessories as we can possibly fit in while meeting the minimum minimum standard, which is that they're doing some squats, some bench, and some deadlift. You know?
Yeah, I agree. This is how I would program people. I divide things in. I have 3 categories. There's, if you're doing powerlifting, we have the have to have, which is squat, bench, and deadlift. Have to have those, because if you don't train those, you're unlikely to be competing in those things. Then we've got things that are kind of like nice to have. So these would be things that maybe closely mimic what the person wants to do or does. So that could be pause work, temp work, or maybe a lift they just like to do. And then there's like the take or leave stuff. Like, I don't think somebody's powerlifting career is going to, be held up by how many bicep curls they did. But if they want to take the bicep curls and do it, if there's somebody who wants to invest that time, it's there. So it's have to have, nice to have, take or leave. It's essentially, I program that way. And then we can tailor that around who the person is and what they want to do. But where do you think it stemmed from then? Because I know that I've heard that honestly don't do accessories.
Yeah. Again, I think it was part of that whole like us versus them othering process that occurred, particularly over COVID. Like every single difference was magnified. On the flip side of that, like I know there were people in Odyssey saying, things about the abs system or whatever.
We do junk volume.
Yeah, it's all nonsense, and they don't they do like 15 accessories every session, and it's 4 times squat, bench, and deadlift frequency, and it's Smolov Junior on everything, and all of this. It was just part of that whole process of people not actually being able to meet and kind of consolidate their beliefs with the actual reality of the thing. I think as well, like people are really slow to acknowledge how often they change their mind on things.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. Yeah.
And I change my mind all the time. You have to assume that people are going to change their mind on stuff. I'd be really worried if someone didn't change their mind when confronted with new evidence that something else is effective or something to that effect. But yeah, I've changed my mind loads over the years. Like I was particularly resistant to prescribing lower body accessory work in the past. Now I've always prescribed upper body accessory work. I used to literally just after each session, when I was writing things on a Google Word, on a Google Doc, I just write after like 2 to 4 upper accessories. That was it.
Yeah.
Enjoy them. But I would be very, very resistant to prescribing lower body accessory work, just because I thought like this is a utilization of our training resources that I don't think is necessarily in line with our goals as powerlifters. And I changed my mind. I was just wrong.
Listen, I've been there. I used to be like staunchly against like leg press for some reason.
Yeah.
I'd be like, leg press is just a poor man's squat. You do leg press because you're afraid to squat. And then like I've done like a complete 180 on that, and I realized the utility of it.
It's the trend. There was a trend there in like, the mid-teens, we'll say, where like if it wasn't with a barbell, it sucked.
Yeah.
Machines suck. Remember that?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, exactly. But me too, probably at some point. I would have thought like, I would have looked down on people just going to the gym and like doing only machine work. It's like, what are you talking about? They're in the gym.
Yes.
They're training. They're doing resistance training. It's like the healthiest thing you can do, outside of any dietary protocol. It's the best thing you can do for your health. So yeah, like I'm far more likely now to incorporate lower body accessory work, particularly if it's preferential or enjoyable to whatever maniacs are out there.
That enjoy things like hack squats and all that.
Split squats.
No.
They exist, believe it or not.
But do you know what? I think what it really points to is it's a lack of nuance. Because say, for example, if you take Odyssey's program on a spreadsheet for whatever individual and abs is like, so abs have the system. It's like everyone has access to this template they can use. Not if you're working with a coach, it's a little bit different. But like, for example, you might have like a lot of newer lifters that are just given this like 4-day template to use. And yeah, sure, you could look at that and say, this, and this should be here. This is wrong for this person. And it's without nuance of understanding what the idea of it is. I'll even tell you, the idea of the system or the ab system or this fucking spreadsheet you can download, you can swear by the way, is these are generally people that have been going to the gym with no program, who have just been going in, you know the types, they go in and they max out their like 140 deadlifts every week just to see where I'm at. Yep. And now you've given them some structure and a measure by which to, whether it's reps in reserve, RPE percentage, doesn't matter. You're giving them some structure at the beginning. And I would actually argue that for most people at the beginning, as long as you're doing some training under some structure, the ifs, ands, or buts probably don't matter that much. And it's only as time goes on, usually you'll kind of see people need a bit more hands-on, a bit more direction, a bit more intervention from somebody with a bit of knowledge. But that's what that is. And I think if you were to look at anyone's program on face value, any coach could pick holes in it, because you maybe aren't, like, for example, if I showed you one of my lifters programs saying, why aren't they doing this? Then I might say, oh, it's because of this, and this previous experience. Like, I've one girl, for example, who hates chest supported rows. I don't know why. She just absolutely, Jem, if you're listening, I know you hate the rows. I won't give them back. But she just despises chest supported rows. So they don't go in there. I would usually stick those in on, say, something like a deadlift day. She's probably like used her back quite a lot during her deadlifts. I want to give her something that she can train up her back without using a lower back, chest supported row. So that doesn't go in there for her specifically. And it's because of conversations we've had. And I think that's the problem with most people when they try to pick holes in somebody's methodology or program, is they aren't aware of the intimate communication usually a coach or somebody the athlete trusts to shape what they're actually going to do when they go to the gym. And I think that's where you'll see these disagreements, because no one's actually looking at, well, what may help them come to that particular decision.
It reminds me of exercise tier lists. Remember a couple of years ago, I think it was Chance Mitchell posted like an exercise tier list, like a squat, bench, deadlift variation tier list. Mm-hmm. And I hated it. It's so stupid. Yeah. They all have a place. They're all tools in the toolkit. It all has a place. Everything. You know what I mean? All the methods, all the systems, everything. It all has a place. There will be an individual that will call for, I don't know, myo reps or something, you know, whereas you might say myo reps are the stupidest thing of all time, but it might actually fit their specific nuanced situation, like you say. The ab system is a very good example as well of change, right? Like the ab system's changed a lot.
Significantly.
And it's funny, when I say people are resistant to like admit how much they've changed, it's like, you know, I might talk to someone in abs now who's been running the system, and they'll tell me, no, it's always been like this. What are you talking about? It hasn't. No, it hasn't. Like, there used to be there was an article, I don't know if it's still there, that expressly stated the ab system is all about everyone doing the exact same thing. And at the time, that like was what made sense for the gym and the place was in. And now if you ask Jay about that, he'll be like, that was stupid. Yeah. And now we're doing what we're doing. You know what I mean?
See, it's as priorities shift, because I know when abs first started, probably before my time, it was very much about uniformity and everyone coming together to do this thing as a team. So obviously, if I was going in to do something completely different to everybody else, it didn't really fit the mold. Whereas now he recognizes, like, one of the things we do is like everybody tends to do their deadlifts on a Thursday and everyone tends to squat on a Sunday. You were at the Sunday session recently.
It was awesome.
But not everybody was doing the same squats. It just happened to be the way the program is laid out, is that we all do whatever our primary squat day is on a Sunday. It's shit crack getting up on a Sunday morning to do your squats. But it's kind of like, what's it, like coming together to, you know, mutual suffering draws us all closer, you know?
And it's space efficient.
Yeah.
And Jay's running a gym.
Yes.
Where those kind of logistics matter.
Yeah.
You know?
So, and the thing is, it's handy as well. We have like an idea of where people are going to be at what time. It means it facilitates more people training together. And I know you've probably experienced this. I think every powerlifter does. You're going to go through bouts, anyone that goes to anything, you're going to go through bouts of low motivation. And it's usually the people around you that you're going to, well, I'm not going to miss training because I want to go shoot the shit with that one, you know? So I know that's been a massive thing for me. Like, I've always, in the entire time I've been in powerlifting, I've had a crew of people to train with. Some from my friend group outside of powerlifting that I've dragged into powerlifting. powerlifting. And then some people I've made friends with in abs are from other places as well. And that's what will make me get up and go to training early in the morning on a Sunday, is to go shoot the shit with the boys.
I really envy that. I've never really had that.
Come up and train.
I would, man. I actually really want to. But no, it's been years since I've really had a consistent crew training. It's awesome. Like I'm always so sad to leave the gym whenever I come up for visits in the different gyms around the place. Phenom, Platinum. I'll have to do abs.
The Chaos boys as well. They have a great crew.
Chaos, 100%. Yeah, it's so cool. I'm so envious of it all. I've been on the cusp of making a big location change just for that.
Do it.
Yeah, I might.
Fuck West Cork. You're out in the boonies. Come on. Nah, but like honestly, that to me has been the biggest addition of anything in powerlifting. Like, because I can't imagine the idea of trying to do any of my training by myself in a commercial gym. That sounds grim to me. Like, you know,
that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, good. Oh.
Yeah. You know, there is. It's easy to focus in on all the cons. There has been pros for sure, like unexpected pros to it all. I'm way more efficient with my time.
Right. Yeah.
Now that I'm training in this environment, probably because I want to get out of there again, but not at the cost of doing all my training. Whereas that might have been the case in the past. So yeah, I'm like, instead of spending 3 hours in the gym, I'm like there for 70 minutes. I'm getting the same amount of work done.
You mentioned this on your programming podcast recently. I only just finished listening to that on Wednesday. It was very good.
Thank you.
No, I really, really enjoyed it. I know you've gotten great feedback for it, but it was actually very, very good listen.
Appreciate it.
And it was, you mentioned that as well. Like there's kind of these like rites of passage in powerlifting. And one of them is, you know, you're in the gym for 3 hours and you're loving life and you're taking ages and it's kind of like you're suffering through it. But as time rolls on, you're in a place now where I'd imagine having those shorter sessions where you're still getting all the work done quite concisely is probably more beneficial to your days and your weeks.
Totally, yeah, 100%. Time management, just my relationship with training. My relationship with training is right now the best it's ever been, which is insane. You know, considering I'm like 10 years into doing it, you would think that would not be the case, but no, it's only improved up to this point. And I think, spending less time in the gym just fucking around for no reason, not taking 15-minute rest periods and scrolling Instagram definitely has helped that.
Well, you're seeing the results of it, like we talked about. Your training seems to be going really well. Do you know there's something you actually said ages ago? I can't remember. You said it on a podcast, and it was sometimes the problem with some powerlifters. So I'm going to paraphrase and tear this apart, but I'll make the point. It was, what if you will make the same or better progress by only doing 2 sets instead of 3? And sometimes that's hard for people to accept. And I know that's an idea I was very receptive to. I could do less and get more. Excellent. Tell me more about this. And that's definitely been a thing for me and how I approach programming. The minimum effective dose, I think, is something you've mentioned very often, something I mention a lot to my lifters as well. It's like, we're going to try to get you to the fucking least right now because we could do more later if we need to. And I'd imagine that's your approach to most of the people you're working with. And look at your own results. You're getting really effective training done in 70 minutes or thereabouts in a gym training by yourself, and you're repping out 250 squats and what'd you say your comp max was on bench prior to?
120.
But you've been repping out like 130.
Yeah.
So that's massive. To put 10 kilos on your bench for reps already is huge. And I believe you recently repped out, was it like 270 or 275 on deadlifts?
Yep.
Like that's huge progress versus say like your last meet was, I believe, Last Chance 2021. Yeah, that's a long time gone.
Yes.
Yeah,
too long. I was actually meant to do ab series.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. And then the debacles with the IPFs and
politics,
the red tape and bureaucracy.
Yes,
ruins the fun, you know.
It
fun
does.
Detected. Have to take it out on the lifters.
A benevolent dictator can get a lot done.
Is this Gaston?
No.
It's Jay. Obviously,
Yeah.
talking about. Jesus.
Benevolent.
Yeah, malevolent. Right. But yes, very true. I think the sad thing there is that it robs people of the opportunity to be on a platform like the series, which is unique of its kind. And I am hoping that's something they'll reconcile later on down the road.
There's work. There's work being done. I think the IRHPF sanctioned session in August is a really, really, really good first step in allowing the two to coexist. And I really believe they can and that they should. Again, to kind of what we were saying earlier, and that like there should be options. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
100%.
So we could potentially see Adam Phillips on an ab series
platform. I'd love to. If I can somehow swing a spot in August, even though I'm not strong enough, I would 100%. I would do it. Like 100% do that. because I have loads of travel before the Phenom meet, and I really don't want to do that. And B, I'd love to do a series. They just look like fun.
Yeah, man. Honestly, it's unlike anything else. As somebody who's done both, like it's incredible. Like, and I think you'll really, it's more fun than anything else, which I think fundamentally is probably should be the main motivator for. I don't think there shoulds, but like I know for me, just enjoying it is what keeps me doing it. Like this is what makes me keep signing up for meets because I just want to have a bit of crack. Like I had great crack at nationals. You know what I mean? I knew no one was dethroning Keane. Like Keane was number one in the under 93s. I was just there to have a fucking good time. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it was a good day. And fucking, I got to meet some nice people, and it was good.
It was fun. It was fun, and you should go to an international competition and see what that's like.
Yeah,
it's not so fun.
Really? Oh,
no.
It's dead quiet anyway.
Yeah, man. It's just it feels like competitions ran by people who don't compete.
Right. Okay.
You know. Yeah, it is what it is. It will have to change. Like I think you quoted Jay as saying earlier in the podcast, adapt or die. I agree. Adapt or die. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, see what's going on with the future of them. Yeah, for sure. And but I suppose the good thing is like you mentioned, Ireland itself is doing so strong that I don't think it's any concern for the lifters on this scene because there's going to be way more opportunities as time goes on. Let me ask you then, what do you think the future of the Irish PF is then specifically? For those listening, I'm sure they're aware you're a part of the committee. So I'd imagine you're going to want to extend into those roles further as we get into the next year and things like that. You probably want to stay involved.
We'll see.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a ton of work. And I'm definitely not someone who does most of it. There's people on the committees, on the executive committee who do just a ridiculous amount of work, way more than me. My own future on the committee as someone who, you know, is like my entire life is powerlifting in a lot of sense. Now, of course, I have loads of stuff outside of powerlifting and that actually helps my relationship with powerlifting, but it's really tough to work in powerlifting and also be on like committees and all that kind of stuff, because I would be very conscious of not doing anything for my own interests, you know, and I find myself often quite limited in what conversations I feel comfortable having for that reason,
right? Okay.
You know,
yeah.
So long term, I'm not sure on my position in the committee. I feel like you can have a lot of impact, a lot of positive impact outside of the committee as well. You know what I mean? If you're listening, volunteer. Like help out at a meet. You know what I mean? Or inspire other people to volunteer. Or just be sound.
Yeah.
That's a really underrated thing. Just be sound at meets. Introduce yourself to people. Go around and shake hands and get to know everyone and help make everything like a real, just nice community. That's such a powerful thing to do at a competition, and like you may help out more there than you or anyone around you realizes. But I think that can really help. That's something I try and do a lot. I'm a bit awkward, but I try anyway. Same at internationals. Just because I'm at an international, I want to do the exact same thing. I feel like it's a really cool experience being part of the Irish team and going to an international comp, because we just do have a different presence about us, and it's just a fun, open, friendly, together kind of presence. And like if we're working in with someone, like we're loading there, like I'll know all their lifters warm-ups. It's not the same the other way around. You know what I mean? We do just have such a kind of a strong community vibe. Even when it doesn't or hasn't felt like it, our baseline is so much higher than other nations.
Yeah, I would agree completely. Like I've seen Odyssey coaches loaded on racks with them. I think pretty much every Open this year. And last year as well for a good few of them as well. And Connor and I were spotting and loading, and Cormac as well jumped in with us at Junior Nationals on the Sunday session with that nobody ever wants to spot and load for. We all did it together. So yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that's the important thing to keep in mind with all these things, is that particularly in something like this is what I say. I actually had an episode hasn't released. It will by the time this comes out with Raquel, and we were talking about like some of the differences with like Irish PF and abs. And ab series is like very strictly like it's Jay's vision of what he wants to present powerlifting as. But the Irish PF is like this collaborative effort. And yeah, there's probably sometimes going to be like noise and friction because so many ideas, like you've mentioned yourself, like there's going to be competing interests sometimes if you're going to be running your own club, and then also in this thing that's like this body. But I think it also represents that when we do get together, we can actually make this thing work really, really well. And I like that that's the thing for it. So do you think moving forward then the meets will just get bigger and bigger and better for the RSPF with the people involved?
Yeah, I guess they have to. The demand is huge at the moment, so
Massive.
we really just need to host more competitions. I had meant I was lying in bed last night. I just had this weird thought of like, how many members do we have? Because I'm pretty sure it's higher now than it's ever been. So I must look into that. I didn't look into that. But yeah, we have to. We just have to kind of continue to facilitate a landscape whereby more clubs pop up around this awesome sport that just seems to be able to bring people together for whatever reason, and just keep doing it, and almost ignore some of the turbulence that exists in wider communities. There's talks of a sumo rule coming in, and I just saw people freaking out. It's like, guys, relax, chill out. Like, even if that came in, like, powerlifting is still there. You know what I mean? Just because some very out of touch individuals want to bring in another very, very silly rule, doesn't mean that like the sport's future is doomed and you're gonna have to find another thing that you love. Like, no, just go and do a series meet. If that's what you care about, or if the new rules aren't to your favor.
Yeah, you can still just enjoy powerlifting. You don't necessarily have to jump through all these hoops. There's other ways to do it as well.
And I think the RSPF will continue to be there regardless. I really believe that the RSPF has its own. It's a very kind of self-sufficient. I don't think it necessarily relies on any external organization. I think if every external organization was to cease to exist in the morning, the RSPF would still be there, going strong.
Yeah,
I really believe that.
Yeah, it's a good crew of people involved, and it shows in the meets, And like I said, I'm happy that there's two different flavors of powerlifting that we can have that are fundamentally the same thing, but can be presented very differently depending on what people want. But am I right in saying you had a conversation with Gaston about the bench change?
Yeah.
You put it to him that it was stupid.
Yeah, yeah. A few people. Yeah, how to not get in trouble.
Yeah. You vocalized your.
It is dumb.
Yeah,
it is just straight up dumb, in my opinion. And it kind of, speaking as someone who's, like I say, in a lot of ways, my life is the sport, and like my boots are on the ground, my ears on the ground. Like, I understand the sport in a way that maybe it sounds arrogant, but in a way that a lot of these people on committees don't. There's a certain committee that has 12 members, and only 2 of those members have ever competed in powerlifting. One very active, and he's a nice guy. The other once in 1974, and the 10 other high-level committee members have never. And I think there's some injustice in that. I feel like that group of people shouldn't be allowed to tell an individual that, like, you just can't compete anymore, because there exists individuals who just cannot exist within this new rule set. And like, if that's the case, what the hell are we doing? What's the point? Like, what, that powerlifting is so inclusive, and it's so available for everyone, that to me, that's like such an unbelievable evil. And it really angers me. That should not happen. Like, this should be a place where everyone can participate in, again, this unbelievably healthy thing. And maybe that's a byproduct for a lot of people, but it is like, there'll be so many rewards reaped that people don't even know about yet for having just been in the sport. You may never be the strongest lifter, but I promise you, if you keep doing this, when you're 60, 70, 80 years old, you will be in so much better shape than you would have been had you never engaged in resistance training. So to put this extra barrier in place for certain individuals, to me, is just, it's almost unforgivable. I can't understand the rationale. Again, for what? To make it more marketable, like to make a certain like news organization like want to post videos of stuff, or to stop like usually 14-year-old boys on TikTok commenting on people's videos. Like, who cares? It's part of like the powerlifting identity. If you're a powerlifter, and I think this goes for the majority of powerlifters, you're kind of proud of all the stupid stuff. You're proud of the silly bending of the rules. That's part of the skill element of the sport, in my opinion. It's like looking at the rule book and seeing what you can get away with. The arch, different equipment that we use, even though I think these new sleeves are incredibly stupid. Low bar squats, and particularly low bar squats. These are all little the sumo deadlift. These are all little kind of evolutions that we've made over time. And to just come through with this blanket rule change that fundamentally changes the identity of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with it. And I did make that vocal. I did make that heard, and it's kind of, I guess it fell on deaf ears, right? And the sumo change was mentioned then. We won't get into that.
Tell us how you really feel. No, look, right, honestly, firstly, thanks for sharing your thoughts, because it's something like I've brought up with a couple of people that I've had on that are in the IPF or the Irish PF, and people kind of play defense a little bit. And like, I'm staunch, like, this is a dumb rule. It doesn't make any sense. I don't care how fucking upset saying that. Like, it is a stupid rule, and it's done to appease people that are not in the sport. And I think it's very bizarre for a governing body that has like subsidiaries that make it up didn't field this to say, what do you guys think of this change that only negatively affects the sport? Because I don't think anybody that was even remotely in, like, if you had an external body that was kind of interested in powerlifting, I would implore them to say, name me one person or entity that said we would be involved if it wasn't for that bench press. I guarantee they don't exist, because it only affects, I think, a certain subset of lifters. And I particularly think it's a lot of like smaller female lifters who one of the massive, I've said this to many people I've had on, one of the things I love about powerlifting, the same goes for CrossFit, is that it presents male and female lifters the same. No one gets more of a spotlight. Like in other sports, this does happen, but like we have a great platform to demonstrate both male and female sports and demonstrations of strength in this case. And I think it's robbing some people of that because of something arbitrary, as you say, to appease people that either aren't in the sport or they're 14-year-olds on TikTok. And I would point the finger then, maybe it's the people that made this decision that don't understand how social media works, and 30 comments on a video is really not a lot of people.
Yep.
That's in the ground. And I know we can't really understand that in our little animal brains, that, a lot of comments on one thing isn't the end of the world, but it isn't, because no one, I would say the vast majority of people in the world, whenever you even talk to the general public about powerlifting, they go, oh, that thing where you throw the bar up over your head.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, no, it's not that one. It's the one we pick the weights up off the floor. Like, right, cool. And then they kind of like switch off because they think it's strongman then. But then the people that do know what it is, that are interested in it, probably don't care about any of these things, And I think it just, not only does it create a negative space for the lifters, and as you say, push people actively out of the sport, I think it makes it harder for people to watch, because now they don't understand what's going on. Why did they not get it when they got it?
Yep.
Yep. Like, I can explain squat depth to somebody. I can't really adequately explain bench depth in one sentence.
Well, that's because no one can. And it doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
The rule as it's written has been clarified like a handful of times, and none of the clarifications have come to any kind of logical conclusion, to the point that the rule pretty much hasn't been enforced. It's been very, 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 very rarely enforced. I'm not sure. Maybe there's been like 1 or 2 failures within the Irish PF, and a very, very small amount in the IPF. And that's going to be a justification for the rule. It's going to be like, well, look, it hasn't amounted to like 40% of people failing a bench because of it, so it doesn't matter. No. No, it will be enforced, and it will rob people of big lifts. It'll rob people of just the joy of having competed. It will stop people from even toying with the idea of competing. Do you remember your first competition prep?
Yeah.
Do you remember like struggling with the rules?
I remember, if it's an actual genuine question, the thing I remember struggling with most is like understanding that the way I lift in the gym might need to be that bit better on the platform. I might need to do it slightly differently, or because I didn't know. So I can only imagine if I'm picking you up right, like I can only imagine if somebody who's been training bench press for maybe a couple of months and decides, or years, and decides to jump into a meet. Now suddenly they feel like they have to rethink everything they've been doing for however long.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I think where people fall down a lot when they come into the gym and they talk about like technique. The moment you have to start actively saying, well, I put my foot here and this foot here, and then I grip the bar this way and this way. I have to my chest can only rise this many degrees, and it's like, all right, now you're probably not going to potentiate the best you possibly could as if you just went and did it.
Yep.
And I think this rule probably pushes people more to having to probably change more than is worth changing for them to participate in the sport.
It's just like, yeah, it's another detractor from the potential enjoyment of that whole process. Your first competition prep, there's enough to be worrying about. There's enough anxiety, particularly for people who've never had an outlet for sport or for physical activity in their lives, which are a population of people I care about getting into the sport more than anyone, because I think it's really important. And I really believe in powerlifting as that outlet. It could be the thing that stops the person from engaging in this physical activity for a long period of time. And like I said, that's pretty much unforgivable in my book.
Yeah, fuck you, Gaston. But
you said it.
Yeah, it's me, Irony, and you can find me on Instagram. Give us a follow. But I think it's the noteworthy thing, though, is that, as you say, I would actually doubt maybe this is going to stay in the rule book for that long. The only concern I would have about it ever being put in, as somebody like, I have a fairly like surface level relationship with the not the Irish PF, but the IPF. I haven't gone international for anything. Like, I'm only really invested in what's going on domestically. Personally, I will watch it. Like, I'll watch the guys compete now in Malta, but I'm only really invested in what's going on here. So my only concern with it on a local level is that this opens the floodgate for them to put in a sumo rule, a low bar rule, a whatever it might be.
That was my main concern. Of course, all of the concerns I outlined here were present, but my main concern was the precedent that this sets, like you say.
Yeah, I think it's a dangerous one to set. But look, I suppose all we can do is see where it goes over the course of time. But let me roll it back a little bit for you, because I told you at the start I wanted to ask a little bit about like Odyssey Strength, and I don't know if we've even gotten there. Like, so this is Adam Phillips. So you got into powerlifting quite young, and then obviously somewhere along the way, you've done a couple of. You can go look up Adam Phillips's Open Powerlifting Tour.
Please don't wait till September.
Lifting since he was 15 years old, thereabouts. But where was it that you decided I'm going to start my own thing?
Really early, and I spent a few years like going back and forth, trying different things. Had my own thing really, really early on, actually. And that kind of fell apart and rose again as something else with a couple other different iterations in the middle. I kind of knew, like, doing my leaving cert in school, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And I remember saying to people, and not to discredit these people, like super, super important people in the kind of development, my career development, would say. But I remember telling them, like, I want to coach powerlifters full time. This was in like 2015. So, I think it was actually before the Irish PF.
This is
the
IDF,
first
yeah.
It was before the first Irish PF meet.
The dark ages.
Yeah, man. I said it and I was laughed at.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you talking about? You're never ever going to make money. You're never going to have like a viable. That's not viable from a business point of view. And like, here we are. So yeah, it's something that I had this like weird vision for pretty early on, out of kind of sheer stubbornness and probably some underlying things. But yeah. I guess like it might be worth explaining how I got into powerlifting.
For sure.
So I did play sports my entire life, like lots and lots of sports. And then I zeroed in on a sport. I zeroed in on rugby, quite young. Loved it. Was as obsessive about rugby as I am about powerlifting. And then I had to stop playing when I was like 15 or 16. And that sucked. That really sucked. Of course, I was in the gym at the time. Maybe I was a little younger, 14 or 15. And I was in the gym at the time. And we have had this gym in Bantry in West Cork, where I'm from. The rowing club gym. And it was like gear from like the 70s, we'll say. Like really, really bad, dangerous to use stuff. And I went in one day and I saw this dude who, like, I didn't know him personally, but I knew him, like, small town, so people. Yeah. I recognized the guy, Jack dude. And I saw on the whiteboard in the gym, it was like 200 by 3 on the squat. And I'm pretty sure he was doing 10 by 3 of small of junior. I didn't know that at the time. I came to know it a few months later myself. That was Barry Piggott. He's from Bantry as well. And I was like, holy shit, I want to do that. So that summer I picked it up. I went and I found the kind of the gym that had only recently opened. It was kind of a perfect storm. It had only recently opened Raymond Hand's gym, RPM Fitness. And Ray was a strong dude himself. He could squat 200 kilos, which to me was just this unbelievable amount of weight that I never thought I would, this unattainable amount of weight. And he could deadlift like, I think at the time, like 280, 290, that kind of weight, which again, crazy stuff. And just completely got bit by the bug. Like started sitting, I remember being in like my leaving cert in school, and I didn't love school. Like I was an okay student, specifically in subjects that I liked. I did quite well in subjects that I liked, and I like didn't do well at all in things I didn't like naturally. But I would sit in classes I didn't like either like sneakily watching or reading powerlifting content, or like writing in my copybooks at the time, like numbers I wanted to hit, and like like calculating like how long it would take me to get there if I maintained this rate of progress and all this stuff. So yeah, I obsessed about it. I remember 2014 World Championships. That was the first Worlds I watched. Johnny Candido, my favorite lifter at the time, total 682.5. And I remember sitting there, and I remember thinking, I think I had squatted 200 kilos at this point. I remember being like, oh yeah, I'll do that like next year. Meanwhile, I've yet to actually officially register that total 10 years later, nearly. And so yeah, I became obsessed about it. I would watch Worlds. I would sit there with notebooks, like just making notes on what was going on, and like learning how to work the board, and what different strategies different teams were using, and all this kind of thing. And yeah, I knew then that I wanted to try and do this. And I kind of saw, so I knew that I was not going to go to college. Even if I was offered a course, I was not going to do it. I was going to take a gap year and go and do a personal training cert and try and make this happen, with the view of, at the time, opening a powerlifting gym, like only powerlifting, like and so I worked, like I say, with general population as a means to an end, I suppose, at the time. And then I ended up actually falling in love with that too. That was such an enjoyable experience. I had moved to Dublin for a short period of time, but then was actually offered by Raymond Han in RPM Fitness. I was offered a job there, which was this like Goldilocks job. You couldn't make it up because this is in West Cork. There's nothing there. The fact that this like exact facility, this thing that like represented almost exactly what I wanted to do. Like it was general pop, but it was strength training. It was all strength training. It was so cool, man. Like I wish people could have seen what it was. And there's loads of gyms, particularly here, that do exactly what we did. But it was just so awesome to see, like, it was actually mostly women, funnily enough. We could never figure out why. We never marketed specifically to women. But just to see, like, I'd say the average age was like 35 to 45. And just to see 35 to 45-year-old women getting really strong. Like, there was loads, like 150, 130, 140, 150 deadlifts and things like that. It was just so cool. So I really fell in love with that. But at a certain point, I think I had spent like 2 years from, we'll say, like 2016 to 2018 trying to figure out like the perfect name.
Right, that's a long time to spend on a name.
Oh man, it was insane. I did have a couple of different trial runs.
Go on.
They sucked.
Go on. You have to name one or two.
There was Vitality.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds like a wellness club.
I was gonna say, or gaming organization, which it actually is. Rise.
Is it spelled with a Y?
No, thankfully.
Okay.
Oh, maybe it was. No, I don't think it was. I think it was Rise. I think I did toy with the idea of spelling it with a Y. Yeah, man. And then Odyssey. And I have no idea how I came upon it or where the thought entered my mind, but I was like, I remember being like struck. And I was living at my mom's house at the time in 2018. And I remember just being like, oh, like that's perfect, And I actually went and looked into what the word represented and Homer's Odyssey and everything, and it was perfect. And it actually means a lot to me. Like, people think it's just a throwaway word, and but no, it really, to me, represents exactly what powerlifting is. And yeah, that's where we're at.
Did you think it would become as big as it is?
No, of course not. No, absolutely not. It started with me just like writing programs for my friends in that gym at the time, who were also kind of loosely interested. and 2 or 3 of them competed. And then at 2016 IDFPA Nationals in the Red Cow in Dublin, it was the most ridiculous competition of all time. I met Nathan Keenan, who was just ridiculously strong. Nathan, like a lot of people don't know Nathan because he doesn't have a very big social media presence. He's one of these dudes that's just great at everything he does. He's legitimately a genius. He's one of the best guitarists I've ever met. Super strong guy. So I remember just having the ignorance on the day to be like, do you have a coach? And he said no. And I was like, I'll coach you. And that's pretty much, that was the jumping point. I was working with him, just started slowly kind of developing a network. Met Connor Campbell in September of that year. Same exact thing. I saw him. It was his first competition and hadn't a clue. Maybe more so than any case I've ever seen. I was hold this against him. He went out to talc himself.
Yeah.
That's a common enough thing. But yeah, I saved him from that and brought him on board. Again, I just asked him, do you want to coach? And he said no.
Yeah, he said, I've listened to the story on your podcast. He's like, I'm fine, thanks.
Yeah, and he came back like 4 weeks later, which was very unexpected. And again, that developed its own little network in a different part of the country. Then Andrew Rowe and a couple other people. And yeah, man, like I could not have imagined this. And, you know, people ask like, what were the exact steps you took to build your business? So I'm like, I didn't. Like, I just got lucky and I kept rolling with the punches and putting one foot in front of the other and just saying yes to stuff and taking opportunities as they came. Big one for me was it was in 2019. Just got a random text from Jay asking if I wanted to go and do the University World Cup with Dav. And the idea of it, like I looked at the text for probably like 10 minutes. Again, I'm like an anxious enough person. So the idea of it scared the shit out of me. And I remember just being like, just fucking say yes. And I just typed yes and press send. And then I typed my actual response after that. So yeah, saying yes to that was super important. It was really, really kind of solidified everything for me. No, I could never have imagined that it would get to this. And if this is all it ever gets to, like, I'd be delighted. You know what I mean?
From an idea you had when you were like in school.
Yeah.
It's a good story. It is an Odyssey.
There you go. There you go.
But honestly, like, I think it's a good. People always ask these things about how people become successful, and a lot of the time it's just keep showing up, just keep doing the thing, and it will build traction over time. Like when I started here with Dan doing this, he'd be like, don't be surprised if like your first 5 or 6 episodes have like 0 listeners or like 5 listeners or whatever. You'll just have to keep doing it for it to grow. I'd imagine you've seen that with your own podcast. Over time, the audience size probably grew and grew and grew. Like I was lucky enough that like the audience size was okay when it started, and then the last couple have been doing really, really well. But it's just the idea of just show up to do the thing you like doing because you like doing it, and usually if you're doing it well enough, success might follow. And there is absolutely a massive element of luck and just being in the right place at the right time with the right person. Like, just so happened you happen to be the guy that Jay thought about. I'll text Adam for this role, and you said yes, and that's where it all evolves from. So with your coaching approach, I know you mentioned Barry Pigott back in the day. You saw he was doing small of. I know you had your experiments that you talk about extensively on your podcast. How did you come to, and I'm sure most people have heard this expression first from you, of the bottoms up approach to coaching? So there's top down and bottoms up. If you want to briefly explain it for the people at home, please feel free. But how did you come to that realization that this was the approach that best served you and best served the individual?
If you want to hear more about it, read my most recent article. Posted today.
I'll post the link below.
Please do. That'd be great. Thanks, man. How did I come to it? So Mike Teixeira, the grandfather of all good powerlifting ideas, pretty much. He started talking a lot about emerging strategies, and I remember being very intrigued and quite confused, and a little bit skeptical of it. And particularly all the kind of new terminology and whatnot. I remember hearing pivot for the first time and like rolling my eyes a little bit, being like, "What's this? Like, what's the why?" You know what I mean? So I decided rather than just kind of dispel it, to actually dig into it a little bit and see where it came from. And so I watched absolutely everything I could find on how Mike came about it. And he talks at length about it in a particular seminar. I think it's a Brooklyn seminar. If you put Brooklyn seminar Mike DeShear in YouTube, I think you'll find it. But he heard about it. He heard about it from a guy named Derek Everly, who's a baseball coach, I believe. And Derek took the principles from Anatoly Bondarchuk, who I believe is a hammer throw coach. And the kind of idea is just that it's open-ended. And that made a lot of sense to me, kind of in line with the Odyssey, you know? Everyone's running their own race. Everyone's on their own journey. And this open-ended approach kind of, it posited a lot of ideas that I had often kind of questioned. I'd often been quite skeptical of my own programming. I don't know if you've ever experienced it. I think everyone kind of...
All the time, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, why? Why am I giving them this number of sets? Like, how do I know? And I had kind of reached a peak in terms of how much I was struggling with that. That I had actually started along the lines of a bottom-up approach without even knowing it. I just started doing kind of wackier stuff that was more open-ended. All the original lads will remember rep outs, which were essentially just like AMRAPs, where it would be like, let's say 70% of your 1 rep max for an AMRAP at an RPE, and then do a load drop and repeat. Like get like X amount of reps done with that weight, and the weight would scale each week. But that was open-ended. That was disgusting and torturous, and I don't recommend it. But that was quite bottom up. And so, yeah, just as I kind of learned more and more about the kind of guiding philosophies of it and how you can really satisfy the burden of proof that comes with saying, I am providing you with individualized training. Because there's a burden of proof there. You know what I mean? When is something an individualization? When can you actually confidently say, I have made an individualization? It's hard. Sometimes you never can, you know? That kind of scares a lot of people off, the idea of a bottom-up approach, because it is just so infinite in terms of its potential for complexity. But like I say, and I know you referenced me on the podcast a couple of times saying it, like, powerlifting is really simple. So I always fall back on the simplicity of powerlifting in the situation where I am faced head on with the complexity that is the person sat across from me or on the other side of the screen, you know? But a bottom-up approach does at least attempt to decode some of that complexity, you know? Whereas oftentimes the inverse, a top-down approach, just ignores it a little bit, and you know, maybe even pretends it's not there, but it's always there. You know, you're just choosing to ignore it, and that's perfectly fine. In my most recent article, I do touch on a top-down approach versus a bottom approach, and that's something I had bought into in the past. I had thought that a top-down approach was just inferior, and that if you were running a top-down approach when you were aware of a bottom-up approach, you were doing a disservice to your clientele or whatever. That was stupid. another place I've changed my mind, because, like I say, you know how I say that people choose to ignore that the bottom-up approach exists. It's the same the other way around. Within a bottom-up approach, there will exist periods where you have to run a top-down structure, a top-down format, a top-down approach. You'll have to be faced with the deadline of the competition. I remember thinking that early on when I was learning about the bottom-up approach, and then just being so kind of caught up in how cool and exciting it all was that I was just kind of like, don't worry about that. You know what I mean? But yeah, like the whole point of the bottom-up approach is that when you do get to that period of time where you have to be top down, you're at least making educated guesses. And that's pretty much all it's ever going to be. But to me, that's better than not having any kind of education behind the guesses, I suppose.
No, I completely resonate with it. I can give you an exact example. Even recently, I had a new lifter sign up with me right after the February Open, because I handled him. His coach wasn't there, so I handled him, and he signed up with me. And that was like maybe 7 weeks out from junior nationals and you've got a spot at that as well. It's like, I know nothing about you. Like, I know nothing about you. So we're just going to go with something I think will work. We'll obviously communicate week to week and see how things are going. And he had a great day at junior nationals. But I had to utilize a more top-down approach with what I assumed would work. Do you know what I mean? But now that we're working together a bit more time, we can start to figure more about him and rather than having a very strict trajectory, it's like, let's see how things go as time goes on. He's a young guy. So like, you know, he's got exams or he's, you know, in work or he has a devs or, you know, he could legally drink now. So he's doing a bit of that. So these are the variables that we can actually take into place now. But I do also see the utility of something like a top down, like we talked about earlier on. If you have somebody who's never had a program before, just being able to give them something is better than nothing, assuming that it is made to try and be as pliable as possible, I guess. But I would also say, I think sometimes what will happen with a lot of coaches and a lot of gyms or a lot of places, it's you're just trying to jam the square peg in the circle hole sometimes, and it's not going to work. Whereas sometimes you can say, maybe fuck the peg and fuck the hole. Let's talk about what we want to do rather than just making this thing happen. But it's the balance of both and the benefit of both. Naturally, if we could individualize everything to every person, that'd be the best outcome. But we're never going to be exactly there. So if somebody said to me, is it better off with me coming to you for some, let's say, when I worked in FlyFit, one-on-one PT versus going up and doing a circuit class? It's like, it's probably better to come to me, but doing the circuit class is better than doing nothing. So I'd rather somebody take a template that was designed without them in mind, that's just a generic plan that they can just run for 8 to 10 to 12 weeks and see what happens and gather the data from this than not do anything.
I completely agree. And I think that's where just honesty and communication surrounding, or I guess honesty in marketing, it was really, really matters to me. You know, that's one of the things that often bugged me was when I saw great claims to individualization, let's say in a circuit class or something to that effect. It's like individualized plans here. What are you talking about? How can you individualize for someone you don't even know yet?
You can't.
You just can't, you know? So I think we as an industry need to be really careful with what I refer to as race to the bottom marketing. I know I didn't come up with that term, but it's something that I think we need to be really careful of, because it's like the old story of the undercutting PTs, you know? If one PT in, let's say, FlyFit of 15 PTs undercuts the next guy, it starts this chain where all of a sudden we're all charging €5 for an hour of our time.
Yeah.
And no one wins there. You know what I mean? So if you don't operate with a training system that allows you to actually delve into individualization as a concept, then just omit it and let that be another thing, because maybe it's actually better for you to not individualize. Maybe that makes more sense for you in the position you're in. And that's so perfectly okay. Just be honest about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Have you ever considered like just selling templates?
No.
Never.
No.
You want to work intimately with the people you're with?
Kind of. We offer right now the closest you will probably get to that, which is kind of a consultation service, whereby I or one of the other Odyssey coaches will consult with the individual once per block. So at the end of their block, they'll submit, and we do provide them with a training sheet. They'll submit the results of the block to us. We'll run a brief analysis, draw whatever conclusions we can, and there will be like a journal, so we'll be able to actually kind of catch ourselves up on some of the goings on of the block. Draw whatever conclusions we can, throw some ideas at them for next block, send them all of this in a video, get their feedback, get their responses, finalize the next block, and off we go again. That's the closest we'll probably ever come to it. But you know, I've pretty much built the brand around us working with the individual and individualization. So no, I don't think we'll ever. I had toyed with the idea recently because, again, actually, the gym I'm training in at the moment, there's tons of young dudes who have no idea what they're doing and just need the program you're talking about. And I did build out a pretty comprehensive program that they could all kind of pass around to each other, that had like a really cool setup menu. I just did it for fun, where they could, like, in different drop downs, like pick different styles of training, and it would populate the training based on all of this. So I was like, will I just release this as the Odyssey program? But no, I don't think I will.
Don't think it aligns with what you want to do?
No.
The reason I ask is because I'm sure you're quite familiar who Barbell Medicine are.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a free template called The Bridge. And more often than not, people will run The Bridge and then end up either buying a template from them or they'll go and sign up for coaching. And even personally, I've been toying with the idea. I'm like, because I'll just say I prefer to work with the person, but there are people that just want to buy a plan or just want a free plan. And I'm like, maybe I can give people like a free plan and then just either sell them a template at the end or they can maybe that'll buy them into coming into coaching. Because at the end of the day, I do get what you're saying, but like they're going to want to do something anyway. And I think the sooner they're doing something structured is probably better than never. I better fucking see this now. And you're going to, maybe Ian was right. Maybe I should be doing this. But like that's like, they're like the dichotomies I think we come into. It's like, yeah, I don't want to be the person that just sells off plans, but like, I would imagine the vast majority of people that go to the gym don't have any plan.
You're dead right.
Like it's still better than doing like if they're like, because oftentimes I used to say to all the coaches and like these people come in to just walk on a treadmill for an hour and leave. I'm like, yeah, but it's going to be much easier to get them from the treadmill to the weight room than it was to get them from the couch to the treadmill. So they've already done most of the battle there. So don't worry about that. Like I've gotten people out of like when I was running classes, like I got so many people out of classes that were like, can you show me how to deadlift? I'm like, absolutely no problem. Come on downstairs, you know? And it's speaking of when you were coaching those strength classes you mentioned with the 35 to 45-year-old women, did any of them actually convert to powerlifting in the end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A few of them did meet, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
It was awesome.
I love
so
that.
cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So cool.
Now, this is a question that came in when I put up like the little question box. I would imagine some coaches rely on a top-down approach or just like a template approach because either they're serving like a massive number of lifters or maybe they don't know how to go about individualization. But then another thing is you'll see is, and I see this a lot more newer coaches, particularly, there's this over obsession with like how a lifter looks when they move, when they go through a range. So we'll often call this form or technique. And where do you think that obsession stems from? Do you think it's people come through PT courses where this is all tied into safety and injury risk? What do you think brings that into powerlifting? Because there is still a massive element of it in powerlifting.
That's definitely part of it. It's really, really difficult to get really good information. It's particularly difficult for a layperson to begin to unpack and understand some of the kind of emerging evidence surrounding pain and injury. I can't.
Yeah.
I let other smart people do it for me, and then I mine from them. Barbell Medicine are such a fantastic resource for that. Highly recommend to anyone listening. But
pain and training, what do?
I literally, yeah. Oh, was that our one?
That's them. They
do. Yeah. We kind of did one as well.
Good.
But yeah, I think powerlifting is a case where it's always going to be prevalent because at the end of the day, the goal is to lift as much weight, and so people are always going to want to make whatever optimization they can make to potentially add that extra gram or 0.5 kg to the bar, right? It's hard to convince people that maybe not focusing on it at all will be the thing that actually converts in the way you want it to convert. Because there's far more to high level performance than just the way you move, the biomechanics, you know? We're super complicated. Everything is a biopsychosocial endeavor. And so what I'm trying to say is that it's so multifaceted that maybe you would be better off focusing less on like trying to look like Yuri Belkin and instead focusing on developing your confidence, developing your ability to walk up to the bar completely clear of mind and just do the thing in the same way you've done it 50,000 times previous over the the last couple of years. And that's surprisingly uncommon. I don't know what your feelings are towards that, but I find it's really uncommon. People freak out. People change a lot when it comes to a lift that's on the line, where something's on the line. And I often feel like it's because they've somehow missed that. They've somehow missed the kind of the memo on developing the non-technique side, we'll say movement side of their technique. So what a lot of people I won't say what a lot of people listening, but what a lot of people like to try and do is pigeonhole me in what I'm saying into as if I'm saying that technique doesn't matter. Like, of course technique matters. It's like saying hard work matters. Yeah, obviously. I thought we moved past this. I thought this was the conversation like 20 years ago, you know? And I thought that, you know, the degree of spinal flexion, which you have absolutely no way of actually understanding. You can see the back. The back and the spine aren't the same thing. Your lumbar spine is definitely not in flexion.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty hard to make your lumbar spine actually go into flexion. It's usually in extension, even in the most rounded possible back position. So yeah, maybe you'd be better off just not looking at any of that, you know?
I think it's the moment you're made, like somebody says, oh, you do this, by the way, and you become this suddenly like self-aware and self-conscious about it. You are no longer able to properly demonstrate your abilities in that position. Well, my left foot has turned out a little more than my right. Who cares? Who cares? Because now that you're thinking about your left foot, you're not thinking about moving the weight. You're thinking when you shouldn't be thinking. Just lift the thing.
Exactly.
And I would completely agree, because I know in the way you mentioned, you might have had the finger pointed at you saying, Adam says technique doesn't matter. Adam doesn't say that. But I think sometimes it's this thing with abs. And I'm not saying some particular abs coaches don't overemphasize technique. Maybe they do. I just don't think it's universal in the club. I've had these conversations with Jay, and he's like, it doesn't matter if your back is flexed during the deadlift. What I just don't want to see is the bar like start to drift away from you on the way up.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it's going to start feeling like dog shit. So like I had a new guy start with me recently, and it's a friend of Raquel's. And you probably have seen James McLaughlin before. He's coaching. He's actually been on this podcast. Very cool guy. He was coaching with Shane. So jokingly, Raquel asked me before one of their meets, we were over in Scotland. She says, who do you think's the better lifter between me and James? I was like, I'm not going to answer this. What are you talking about? Like, but they kept pushing me. And I said, James is stronger, but Raquel's more technically proficient. And he was like, what? He really gripped to it. Like, and I kept him, what do you mean? What do you mean? I was like, I'm only joking. Don't worry about it. Like, but like when he started with me, he's like, what can I change? I was like, you don't have to change anything. But then like he was deadlifting the other day. I was like, right, you don't need to start the bar so far away. Bring it like 2 centimeters closer. And it completely changed. So he's like, oh yeah, that feels a lot better. I'm like, that's it. That's what the technique is. We're just trying to have you move maybe that little bit more efficiently, put the bar in a position that you can just rally it more, that you don't have to. I'm not saying put your hips at this angle and your back in this degree of flexion, or your chest in this position, or line your shoulders up over the top of the bar. I'm just move it that little bit closer to you. That's it.
And I'm going to jump in and say, now what? You know what I mean? Like, now what? Now what for the next 20 years? Like, that's done. So I often say, like, you know, technique is quite superficial for the amount of people bang on about it. Like, yeah, that was great. Like, you just, you know, made huge progress right there in that one moment. And now it's done. Yeah. And now we just have to move on and develop every other characteristic that's important for training. Yeah.
I think as well, that a lot of, especially when people are newer and they're like, they haven't trained a particular, like say the squat very regularly, every day they come in, it's going to look different because they haven't figured it out. It's like, I always equate it to a kid riding a bike. I've probably even said on this podcast, like, I don't know, I'm fucking getting old now. But if a kid falls over on a bike, you don't go, okay, you're going to stand up, you're going to brace, hold the handlebars, you're going to pedal left, right, and match your breath to the movement. Right? You just get up and go again. It's fine. Just get up and go again. You don't care. You know, it's fine. Just go. It's fine if you wobble all over the place. I would equate the exact same thing to any new skill acquisition, no matter what level you're, or perceivable level. Like, I'll give you an example. I am terrible at sumo deadlifts, right? I don't sumo deadlift because I'm not good at them. But I know if I trained them enough and didn't project what I assume I do on them from what I do in conventional and just took it as trying something out that's new for fun, I would probably develop it quite well. And I think that's where people fall down. They're like, yeah, but you know, this could have been better, or my elbows could have been this way, or I could have been this way. And I think you fall into this like chasm of these constant barriers you have to break through, and it just keeps creating like friction between you and actually just lifting.
Doing the damn thing. And I would often ask, like, okay, I hear you. What is that affecting? And what will changing it affect? What are you looking at? You know, what are you looking at? I'm looking at the bar. I'm looking at the bar path. I don't really care how the actual aesthetic appears in front of me, once the bar is doing what I want it to do, generally moving straight up and down in the squat and deadlift in a predictable manner, and generally moving back through a curve in the bench, again in a predictable manner. If it's doing that, I don't care that your back's rounded. I know there's absolutely no evidence that a rounded back, which is not the same thing as a flexed spine, definitely not a flexed lumbar spine, they're different things, is not injurious. It's not necessarily injurious. And that is becoming increasingly more talked about and known and accepted, thank God. I just wanted to outline, I suppose, what I am looking at, because I often talk about what I'm not looking at. Technique matters, like I say, and I'm looking at the barbell because I want the barbell to do specific things, of course, and so if the barbell isn't doing what I want it to do, then we'll probably start looking to address that. And oftentimes it's going to be with the smallest effective intervention. The idea to me of changing 15,000 things and like stripping the weight back to like 50% and doing that for 3 months, that sucks. You're missing so much potential for A, just raw progress, and B, then actually finding good technique for you. There's such a huge variance in what good technique looks like. You can't ignore it. You just can't ignore it anymore. Go to a powerlifting meet, watch powerlifting meet online, watch Worlds next week, and just watch. Look at techniques. You're going to tell me these aren't great powerlifters? There's going to be backgrounds. There's going to be knee valgus. There's going to be all the things you heard in your PT course are bad and dangerous. And these are people who've been doing it for 10, 20 years and are at the absolute top of the game,
No, I completely, it all rings true. And I think it's one of the tough things about, I think, when you're in this, I imagine it's probably a bit more prevalent for you because you're in an environment where you're working with most people online. Like, I don't like when other coaches try to interfere with who I'm working with. And they mean it with the best of intent. Like, I could have a lifter who might have, like you say, 10 things we might want to address over the course of a couple of months. But if I tell them about step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I'm just going to completely paralyze them and make them feel shit about their training. Where I say, you know what, let's first work on this and maybe this. And we'll focus on that. But then somebody comes in and is talking about steps 7 and 8. And then they're like, Ian, you never told me this. I'm like, no, I'm aware, but there's no point in having you look at this and this before we've even tried this.
And maybe doing this will stop us from ever having to look at any of that.
Exactly, yeah. That could be like address the one thing and then maybe the rest just all falls into place over time anyway. Or maybe it just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I say, the smallest effective intervention, for me, that's no intervention.
Yeah.
Or at least making the athlete think it's no intervention. Maybe it's a pause squat or a stupid variation that everyone laughs at in the gym or on Instagram or whatever. But if it does the thing that I want it to do without me ever having to break a lifter's confidence by saying, you are doing this wrong and you need to change, which can have a huge detrimental effect. I'm sure every single person listening to this who's involved in powerlifting has seen that or experienced that. I know I have. I'm sure you have as well. If we can just take the tiniest action to actually achieve that without having to tell them 10 things, then 100%.
It's one of two expressions I hate when my lifters or I still work with Gen Pop in one-on-one. Two things I hate. Say, oh, you're going to give out to me. No, I'm not. I'm on your side. I'm not going to complain at you for something you might have fucked up, And then the other one is, I know I'm doing this wrong. Who said you're doing wrong? I didn't say it was wrong. Who said there's a right and a wrong? It's not a test. You're not being passed and failed. You know what I mean? Like, I think the biggest thing, if I was going to say, oh, you did something wrong, it's like, please try to avoid overshooting and training too often. Other than that, I don't care. It's fine. You know what I mean?
And you phrased that in an important way. You said, please try to avoid it too often. Because sometimes you're going to celebrate it.
Yeah, sometimes fun.
Exactly. And like, we all know this. And if you choose to ignore that, you're missing the whole point.
I'm a sucker for a good moment. If someone's having a good day and we've RP8 signals,
let's go. Exactly.
Let's do it. Like, fucking let's see it. Like
100%.
Ramp the shit out of it. I don't care. Just have a good time doing it. Yeah. And I think the thing is that I think most people agree. And I think the problem is that we're trying to stay in the middle. We can acknowledge that technique is important without having to veer into this like paralyzing level of, oh, you're back to the PVC pipe now because, you had fucking 0.5, the fucking squat university bollocks, you know what I mean? I'd rather be this guy that squats this little way than the guy who's like fucking squatting 350 kilos. Yeah, right. Versus the other side of it where it's like, let's not even just look at absolutely anything and just rattle the bar whatever way you want. Of course, you want people to move as efficiently as they can to lift the weights they can, what's comfortable for them. What's your thing? Unconscious, repeatable, safe. I use that all the time.
I've actually taken safe out of it.
Just unconscious and repeatable.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Efficient works its way in there sometimes. If we can make something a little more efficient somehow, great. Sometimes something's repeatably inefficient, and maybe that's not optimal. But I'm definitely, like I say, I'm going to try and do it in a way that the lifter doesn't even know what's happening. That's why I'm a big fan of prescribing where I can different variations, different things that challenge technique. Like I'm always challenging technique. I'm just not saying it.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge potential downside to saying it, and it's all upside for prescribing. We'll say a pause squat or like a slow eccentric. I think you guys call them glass floor deadlift.
Yeah, library deadlift I call them, but
even cooler. I'll try and achieve all that by just prescribing the exercise, because at the end of the day, they're just doing a squat or they're doing a deadlift, and like you're still going to make adaptations to that. You're still stressing the body in a meaningful way, So it's in my eyes, it's like the best of both worlds.
If you had one thing you'd like other people to take away from like what they perceive about your coaching or Odyssey's approach, so what they think versus what is true, what would it be?
That's a tough one.
It can be two things if you want to.
One thing to take away: we're all doing the same shit. We're all just lifting weights, and it's really that straightforward. Just keep lifting weights, and it's not that deep, bro. Do the thing, have fun, enjoy yourself. Because if we're not enjoying this, what's the point? And I said earlier, like the overwhelming majority of people aren't keen Madden. And that is true. The overwhelming majority of the people in the sport aren't, and maybe never will be keen Madden. So, just enjoy it. Have fun.
Yeah.
I know it's not about my coaching or anything like that. And the truth is, I don't really care that much. I'll finish on this. I won't rant on too long about it. We were talking earlier about the free program. The reason I won't do that, the reason I'm not going to like try and get people in the door with something like that, is because I want people to like find their way to me. And like our client retention is insane. And I don't say that to brag. Like I say that just because like to me it's a sign that the right people for us are finding their way to us after all the different trialing and testing over a long period of time, and to me that's important, so I don't really mind what people think of my coaching or me. You can dislike it all, but just fucking try and have fun, and let's all make this as enjoyable a process as we can.
Savage stuff, man. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you, man.